Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are on this great big blue ball hurtling through space. You're listening on, of course, Trace Elements Radio and Revolution Radio, Studio A, and Wolf Spirit Radio. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go over some of the stuff we've brought you to so far. It's a lesson. And let's talk about what lesson means. Taking this bit by bit, piece by piece, tearing this word apart. On. On is Coptic. It's basically the god of Heliopolis. Heliopolis is Neribu. Neribu is Jupiter, who is so active right now. I have images and pictures of what's going on in Jupiter. A rock, they're saying, of some kind just hurled itself into it, committed suicide. And before that, there is a really strange activity going on in the far North Pole. On this planet, there is a lot of strange activity going on in the far North Pole. And we are being bombarded by asteroids, meteorites, maybe. I realize when I talk about the old stories, which I do a lot, it may seem like I am forgetting what's going on this planet. When I tell you about the suicides, which has just jumped to another reservation, especially again in the north in Canada. I've questioned, is it the meteors, and we know it's bad up there and people are starving and they've had everything ripped from them. This is a story of our people worldwide, that we've all been slaves to something. Kings, queens, whoever's in control at the moment. What's important here is that when an old regime ends, it usually ends with death. That the place is just scorched earth. This is what's happening in our north. It looks like we're about to have a very big inundation of water because a piece of some ancient ocean is about to break off. It used to be frozen, and it no longer is cold enough. And C-51, which Chief Charles Tudog and I have talked to you about, has passed. And there are bills all over the planet that have passed that are saying the exact same thing. We have nuclear emergencies on every continent right now. Places being evacuated, spewing radioactive material. And know that if it happens in one place, it's happening everywhere, because we have this great big globe, and our air that we breathe is the air that everyone breathes, no matter where you are. It made me think again when I was reading what's going on in the far north with our native peoples. We've talked about this before. Changes in ourselves. Because what's happening in the cosmos is happening in our solar system, is happening on Earth, is happening in our bodies. What if the suicides, and this is just extrapolation on my part, are contagious? Do you think that's ridiculous? This again speaks of how the connection is so deep between all of us. And I realize that the Western world has taken to worshiping death as life. Heliopolis was represented by the nighttime sun. The abyss itself. Now the abyss, a couple different terms for this. The abyss is the ocean. I actually have a really interesting piece that you may not have seen in the movie Abyss. Something that was taken out unless you have the director's cut and you've seen it. The Pope last year, and we had followed this, said that the King of the world was returning. They are building golden arches for him. United States and Great Britain. Perfect places for the entrance. But if the abyss is the water, and the abyss is the god of earth, which would be Azazel, which would be the bad guy, basically, which the Pope said was coming. We are seeing more and more ancient animals washing up on the ground. So we are glimpsing into the abyss already. I don't know how much more we can take. So the abyss. This is the same word as abyss, Latin abyssia, feminine form of abbot, abbas, female superior of a community of nuns, which is often an abbey. The darkness they fear is, of course, women, even though they like to put on dresses and tell us what to do, what to believe in. We have to look at this God on the darkness, the night sun, the black hole sun. Most of this planet was forced into these religions. Forced. Your people didn't want it. Wherever you are, your people did not want this. Not Christianity. They did not want to be a Muslim. They did not want to be a Jew. This is being forced. Soul, then, was indicated as the morning sun, the bright sun. That's why the creatures in the abyss are self-glowing. They light from within because they are in the darkness. So while Om, the midnight sun, and On, the nighttime sun, often connected with a dark entity, a dark force, a malicious intent. So the word lesson means to have less of a malevolent force inside through instruction. It has been deemed by higher forces that man and woman should learn these things, not from being treated gently and kindly, but by being exposed to insensitive forces of L and S, so less, and their fears. These forces are ancient, still very primitive in their growth, yet they work perfect in teaching such lessons. Fear and terror we have learned very well. So to graduate beyond what they have erected now for humanity, you only need to know when the foolishness must end. This is why many of us are here. And it's been a question that people are asking. How do I know my life's path? How do I know why I'm here? Am I one of these alien things? Am I one of these... What? I know a lot of people want to be Anunnaki, and let me tell you, No, you do not. Those owl-eyed things, that's how they started. Owl eyes. This image is all over the world. A night bird. You are one of Tiamat's monsters. Tiamat was the force that struck Earth. Science has come out last year saying Earth is composed of two beings. Well, okay, they don't say beings, but planets that collided. The asteroid belt is the pieces of Tiamat that did not coalesce. So they are full of life. Maybe just in the form of viruses. Maybe just in a form of the sleeping ones. But there must be life. We are learning these lessons. So to graduate beyond this point, this thing be erected for humanity. And it's being erected. They're making golden arches right when McDonald's is falling, so you won't see as many of them. They're making sure that you still see this same crap. So you only need to pay attention. And when you're ready to go beyond the double-twined serpents and the moon god Sin, aka El, aka Azazel, the dual nature anyway. When you are ready, you will make this choice. You'll make this choice, and we are here to help each other. I have some good news. My dad, for the 5th time, has been nominated for the Blues Album of the Year. We will hear about this April 3rd on CTV. This is Juno. Latin, luno. Connection with the moon, too. And Jew, no, which is hilarious. She's an ancient Roman goddess, the protector, a special counselor of the state. So you know who she works for. She is the daughter of Saturn and the sister, but also wife, of the chief god Jupiter. She is the mother of Mars and Vulcan and Mare. Juno also looked over the women of Rome. Greek, Hera. This still is Isis. Still the same guy. Still the same serpent goddess who used to be a god. That was changed. And to know that this is happening on all levels, we've talked to you about C-51, one of the kill bills. There is no longer an internal constraint left to halt the complete totalitarianism of Canada. Electoral politics, a sham. Media, subservient to corporate power. The working class is being disempowered and impoverished. The legal system, subsidiary of the corporate state. There are no good rules here. So any form of dissent, no matter how tepid, will soon be blocked by an internal security apparatus empowered by the anti-terrorist laws that will outstrip anything dreamed of by the East German Stasi state. No one in Ottawa or Washington intends to help us. Opposing parties, such as Democratic Party, may cry foul when out of power, but once in power, they bow to the demands of this omnipotent military. That's why the gods Goddesses are always military leaders. And if you go back to what we did on Tuesday, I show you how they are always slavers and use us as commodities. They are security organs that serve the corporate masters. So any state that has the ability to inflict full spectrum dominance on its citizens is not a free state. You do not live in a free state unless, of course, you are the Vikings who escaped what was happening in Europe, went to a little island on their own. So it does not matter if it does not use this capacity in front of your face at this moment today. It will use it. History has shown this. Should it feel threatened or seek greater control, and the goal of the wholesale surveillance is not in the end to discover crimes, but to be on hand when the government decides to arrest a certain category of the population. No one who lives under constant surveillance, who is subject to detention anywhere at any time, whose conversations and messages and meetings and proclivities and habits are recorded, stored, analyzed, as ours are, can be described as free. The relationship between those who are constantly watched and tracked and those who watch and track them is the relationship between master and slave. We fight the same things as our ancestors fought. There will be no checks left on state power. State security operates outside of the law. Law is still L and R. It's a bad thing. Citizens will be convicted on secret evidence in secret courts. Citizens will be subject to arbitrary searches and arrests. Due process? That's over. It is. It's over. Internal security organs serve as judge, jury, executioner, like the one God system has always done. The outward forms of democratic participation, voting, competing political parties, judicial oversight, legislation, are going nowhere. They will remain. But they have become a meaningless form of political theater. It is entertainment. That is all. And once the security services become this omnipotent being, those who challenge the abuses of power, those who expose crimes carried out by the government, are treated as criminals. Totalitarian states always invert the moral order. The evil rule, the righteous are condemned. Societies in some places had democratic traditions, or at least periods when openness was possible on a brief level. They are often seduced into these kind of systems because their rules continue to pay outward fealty to ideals, practices, forms of these old systems that I've been telling you about. This was true when Emperor Augustus dismantled the Roman Republic. This was true when Lenin and the Bolsheviks seized control of the Soviets, ruthlessly centralized power. This was true following the collapse of the Weimar Republic and the rise of fascism in Germany. This is true today in Canada and the United States. Government is a fungus growing out of corrupt and decayed civil society. Trying to defend the treaty rights of First Nations people, you will go to prison. Try to halt the tar sands, the fracking, the bitumen carrying pipelines, you will go to prison. Try to oppose Israel's illegal occupation of Palestine, you will go to prison. And once you are seized by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, you will be subject to sleep deprivation, sensory deprivation, the disorienting poles of extreme light and darkness, extreme heat, extreme cold, along with stress position tortures, waterboarding, beatings, pressure point tortures. This is now legal. Those singled out as internal enemies will include people of color, immigrants, gays, intellectuals, activists, feminists, Jews, Muslims, journalists, union leaders, those defined as liberal. You will be condemned by reactionary forces, fed and sustained by corporate propaganda and money, blamed for our decline. The looming economic, environmental collapse, looming, if you haven't noticed, it's on now. You will be pinned by these demagogues, by these hate mongers, some of whom have found perch within the CBC. You've become a scapegoat. The vulnerable are the scapegoats. The ones fleeing wars for their resources are looked at as the bad guys. The random acts of violence, such as an attack on a lone gunman on Parliament Hill, will be justified. Even harsher measures of internal control will happen. And if it doesn't happen fast enough, you will see more false flags. Fear will be relentlessly orchestrated to manufacture paralysis and your consent. So how do we resist? How if this thing is inevitable, as I believe it is? How do we fight back? Why should we resist? Why not give in to cynicism and despair? Why not carve out a comfortable niche, at least one as comfortable as possible, within the embrace of the corporate state, and spend our lives attempting to satiate our private needs? Power elite, including most of those who graduate from our top universities, academics, politicians, the press, and our liberal and intellectual classes, the stars that you see on television, have sold out for personal comfort. So why not us? Too many of us are separated from each other, that the lives we are living are meaningless, and we cannot influence fate. We will all die. Our individual beings will be obliterated. And yet, one of the only coherent philosophical positions is revolt. It is the constant confrontation between human beings and our obscurity. It is not an aspiration, for it is devoid of hope. That revolt is a certainty of a crushing fate without resignation that ought to accompany it. A living person can be enslaved and reduced to the historic condition of an object. If he or she dies in refusing to be enslaved, he or she affirms the existence of another kind of human nature, which refuses to be classified as an object. The rebel stands with the opposed, the unemployed, the underemployed, the workers, the peoples of the First Nations, whose lands and lives are being exploited, Palestinians in Gaza, civilians in Iraq, in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Libya, the disappeared who are held in our global block sites, the poor in our inner cities, the depressed, rural communities, the immigrants, those locked away in our prison system, making money for this beast. And to stand with them means refusal to collaborate with political systems that mouth words of justice while carrying out acts of oppression. It means open and direct defiance. The elites, their liberal apologists, dismiss the rebel. We are impractical. They brand the rebel's outer stance as counterproductive. They condemn the rebel for being inflexible, unwilling to compromise. These elite call for calm, patience, tolerance. They use language of spirituality, compromise, tolerance, generosity, compassion, to argue that the only alternative is to accept and to work with systems of this despotic power. We rebels, however, are not beholden to a moral commitment that makes this impossible. We rebels refuse to be bought off with the government and foundation grants, invitations to parliament, television appearances, book contracts, academic appointments, empty rhetoric. We rebels are not concerned with self-promotion, public opinion. We rebels know, as Augustine wrote, hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are. Courage to see that they do not remain the way they are. We rebels are aware that virtue is not rewarded. The act of rebellion defines its own virtue. You do not become a dissonant just because you decide one day to take up this most unusual career. You are thrown into it by your personal sense of responsibility combined with a complex set of external circumstances. You are cast out of the existing structure and placed in a position of conflict with them. It begins as an attempt to do your work well, ends with being branded the enemy of society. The dissonant does not operate in the realm of genuine power at all. We are not seeking power. We have no desire for office. We do not want to gather votes. We do not attempt to charm you. We offer nothing, promise nothing. All I can offer, if anything, all we can offer is his or her own skin. The dissonant offers it solely because the dissonant has no other way of affirming the truth, which we stand for. Our actions simply articulate his or her dignity as a human being, regardless of the cost. We have the capacity to say no, to refuse to cooperate. Any boycott or demonstration, any occupation or sit-in, any strike, any act of obstruction or sabotage, any refusal to pay taxes, any fast, any popular movement, and an act of civil disobedience ignites the soul of the rebel, exposes the dead hand, the hidden hand of authority. It is only this refusal to cooperate that will save us. What we speak of, what I speak of now, what we have spoke of in the last, forever. There was a time when that alone was enough to get you jailed. There is a time when the operation of the machines becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears, and upon the wheels, and upon the levers, and upon all the apparatus. And you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. Rebellion in the face of tyranny is its own justification. Rebellion allows us to be free and independent human beings. Rebellion chips away, however, imperceptibly, I guess, at the edifice of the oppressor, sustains the fires of empathy, solidarity, hope, and finally, believe it or not, love. And in moments of profound human despair, these flames, no matter how dim, are monumental. They keep alive the capacity to be human. And we must become so absolutely free that existence is an act of rebellion. Once we obtain that freedom, we will discover the rebellion is not defined by what it achieves, but by who we become. Those who do not rebel in our age of totalitarianism, total, full spectrum dominance, capitalism. Those who convince themselves that there is no alternative to collaboration with a corporate tyranny are complicit in their own enslavement. They commit spiritual and moral suicide. They extinguish hope. They become the living dead. No one on this planet shall authorize the most sophisticated security, surveillance state in human history. The corporate coup, it's over, and they have won. Now it is up to us. We are the people we've been waiting for. I don't know if we can build a better society on this planet. I don't know if it's too late. I don't even know if we will survive as a species. But I know these corporate forces have us by the throat right now. They have our children by the throat right now. I don't fight fascists because I will win. I fight them because they are fascists. And in this fight, in the face of overwhelming forces against us, it requires us to find in all acts of sustained rebellion the embers of life, an intrinsic meaning that lies outside of even success. It requires us at once to grasp reality, to refuse to allow this reality to paralyze us. It is, and I say this to all the people, creeds or no creeds, to make an absurd leap of faith, to believe that despite all the evidence around us, that good always draws it to the good, that the fight for life always goes somewhere. I don't know where. Buddhists may call it karma. And in these sustained acts of resistance, we make it possible to reclaim a future for generations that will come after us. A future that the corporate state, if not overthrown, is over. Is over. We continue to fight the ways that they want us to. It's done. You know, after years of non-stop researching, along with experience, of course, and a lifetime of involvement, my mind and body and soul is riddled with symbols, names, stories from our planet and distant planets, extraterrestrial images, unsacred geometry, crystal diagrams, holy languages, strange inscriptions, and everything else that is related to deeply and persistently discovering what the hell is going on in this reality. Every day I watch others begin their quests or remain on a particular phase that simply marks yet another level of the same construct. The whole purpose of what I do and the mission we've been given was to shorten this lengthy, exhausting, sometimes unrewarding process. And there have been many casualties on the way, as some has grasped a little of the truth and been completely blown away, to the degree that their former state may have been better than the latter. Some have sacrificed relationships, reputation, lifestyle, many more things of great importance just to be here, just to keep going. And those of us who are sincere are determined to make sure that it was not all in vain. What has been discovered is we, as a species, vast and great, have faced many stumbling blocks. We have been brave, which accompanies at times foolishness, in opening up chasms that were stamped with fair warning. We have welcomed other beings into our deep sanctum, or holy of holies, with hopes that what they would gain from their interaction with us would increase them from their current state, and thus make our entire reality a better place. Unfortunately, in many cases, that is not what happened. And now, what was the most sacred has been profaned. And I speak not of physical churches or places of worship, but your own precious temple. I want you to remember a certain part in many of the childhood stories we are told. It was about special power that should never fall into the hands of evil as we know it. In the event that this would ever take place, it would mean disaster at catastrophic proportions until it was undone. I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, and respected elders, that this has in fact happened, and that the most powerful weapon you have is you. We have welcomed foreign beings into our lands, and they have betrayed us. But they have taught us a most valuable lesson that shouldn't be repeated anymore. This is the stage that we correct the atrocities and those perpetrating it. To do such things, one must know how it took place. I do my best to show you on all levels how to get your mind and your body and your soul in complete order. The first entry that was made into us is actually communication, celestial light emissions, frequencies, direct audible communications, all serve as straight lines, seeking to pierce our sphere. In short, everything seeks to gain our attention, even if it does not deserve it. The elves, the fairies, that's why it's a wave, an elf wave. It is low. They want your kids. They make circles, which we like, and invite us in. This is why highest states of meditation can only be achieved when one stills or steals their mind back from whatever thought is trying to take it captive, the sound that more and more of us are hearing. So let us keep in mind that we are composite beings. We are Tiamat's monsters. And this means we are made up of several elements. This roughly includes flesh, which has many animal and plant genes that make up its nature, viruses, other things, hive mind, which is a collection of all the knowledge and experience gained by us and others over uncountable lifetimes. Our soul, which gives us our uniqueness and is wholly comprised of not only our personal soul, but interactions, residue, collected from other souls and other spirits that we have encountered. Know now that there are many beings out in the void that are envious of your state, watching with jealous eyes, and wish to make you feel ungrateful, because misery loves company. Misery is contagious, and despair is infectious. And in several instances, these beings forfeited the chance you have been given right now by constantly making bad decisions as if they would have no effect. You've seen those types before. So imagine if every receptor is constantly being filled with something poking at us disturbingly, so much that we have grown to accept it and just live with this. I call this the spear ritual. And I speak on all levels here. Imagine that these intrusions long ago removed us from a certain state that we find the greatest difficulty in recalling because we were so young. This, in fact, has happened. To lend a little bit more credit to this, I will refer to this as magic. It is known that the whole art of voodoo doll is to mimic what these deluded dark sorcerers do in an attempt to steal someone's spirit. They poke you with knives and forks and needles, other stuff. This is why the devil is seen with a pitchfork. We are encouraged to use it for our food, to put that in our mouths. It is known that the allegory given in the Bible about piercing the side of Jesus is an act of the spear ritual itself. Remember, you are the Christ. Christ is the Kundalini. Pictures. What is basically known about this art is when a person is in a weak stage of fleshly life, holes can be poked to remove your soul from your body, allowing a portion of your spirit to travel into the object that they are being poked with. Now comes the conclusion of the mystery of the sphere of Longinus, which was used to poke the side of the Merovingian king while on the cross. Thus, Hitler sought to sequester the sphere in order to gain the power of the Merovingian kings, so his faction could be the new rulers of the world, which still worships the same images as they were encouraged not to by the same book that brings forth those images. Yes, they are worshipping under an image of a sword, which is an upside-down cross. Martians, they are. Wolves in sheep clothing coming from Mars, the wolf planet. Lobo, red as blood, warlike as the Romans, concur. Their founders were Romulus and Remus, suckled by a she-wolf. This is somewhat of a sidebar, no pun intended. But there are many things that the untrained do not know about this reality, and it is safe to say that we are in a frickin' weird place right now. Strange rules, strange costumes, and customs that many of us are not familiar with because we are not high druid priests full of strange customs, now wearing the costumes, now inherited. Often, that is to our own demise and their little buffer for ignorance these days. So when you think of shunning knowledge because it does not make sense, do reflect on how much you really know to begin with. These are adepts in the Merovingian mythos. They know Saturn was the old king of the Merovingian bloodline, and those in possession of the Stone of Destiny, or at least the essence of it, have the right to rule under the covenant that was made long ago when the earth was conned, like Genghis, out of the treasures by beings that used cunning. And for those wondering why I'm insisting a figurehead such as Jesus existed, but more under the title of Apollyon, know that his family line are those who lie and war amongst themselves for position, often taking others' names and the names of other beings that they have conquered. Again, I have pictures. It matters not to them if you understand this or not. You are not even supposed to know about it. The fact is, as you see in the Bible, they are pushing only one bloodline, insisting that everyone that came from this recessive bloodline, which is false, no bloodline that behaves as such could exist to survive as long as the true human race acting as such. may be true, however, that over time, many ended up breeding with this bloodline by force as they raped all the women they came into contact with and killed the men and the young children, especially the firstborn, no matter how people want to look at their precious saints. Jesus is reported in the Bible as coming from the line of Solomon and David, which ultimately leads back to the Cain. All descendants of Cain were given the mark. So Jesus was already marked by the beast, the virgin. And it's important for us to get acclimatized and ready for an in-depth and personal conversation with yourself. Remember, unless you are listening to this with someone else there is nothing to be shy about, however. What must be discussed is the highest nature. This is communion. This is communication, which is intercourse. Intercourse. This may be a little rough according to those terms. There are certain states that we have all been in, and one state is being a virgin. Some are unclear about why they were so fearless as a child, but now I'm certain that fearlessness had as its root our virginity. When free from external influence, one is truly who they are. They have no phobias, no fears, no programming, and it's most importantly, no intrusion. We cracked this code a while back. Similarities between the word human and the word hymen, since they are, at least etymologically speaking, the same word. I came to the conclusion that humans were given that name by an intrusive species who saw them as being very fresh and newbie to the whole game of life and lies they like to play. I speak of the false light, the AI, a royal city founded by Abraham, by the way, who people still think is their father. There's a reason why that city became ruined, and now they are trying to do it to the whole planet. They are known as artificial intelligence, AI, not because they are real, but because of their knowledge is fake. Hold that thought. I'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Trace Elements Radio. Had to say goodbye to my friends on Revolution Radio because they're having some technical difficulties on Studio A, but we will soldier on with my soul and check them out in a bit. Hey, sometimes we have to pull up roots, but we're going to keep going. So, for those of you that haven't seen my pictures of Jesus and who became him and all those things, please join me on Facebook. I put some pictures up on my private group there that I don't put anywhere else, just so you can feel special, because you're special people. And you can, please join me. Join my army. And you can see where my mind went and how I got to what I'm thinking today. So, the Virgin. let me repeat. When free from external influence, one is who they truly are. They're not afraid. They have no phobias, no programming, most importantly, no intrusion. We have cracked this code many times. It is the code to the N. And let's talk about the ins and the outs, the 101 of this. Because know that the intruders are the zigzags. They are about fleeing from those who will expose them. Ben, the abhorrent sons of the right-hand path who scoff at balance. From Rachel, she calls them my son, or the son of my pain. Sin, C-I-N, those who burn with hatred and passion from within, as in cinder. Den, the place they hide in the darkness, out of plain sight, in dark recesses. Fin, they bring to the end, or they bring the end to those poisoned by them. They bring finish. Gin, an alcohol full of spirits, as a drunk who will never enter into higher states of consciousness. Hin, they slow you down and cause great hindrance. Jinn, with J, these are spirits without bodies, envious, debased, made of smokeless fire. A G is also J. Kin, distant relations and relatives sharing a common origin, but do not be fooled. They have done so with force. Len, a double convex shape, just as an eye, as in the all-seeing eye. Lens. Min, a phallus or spearing device. Nin, a Sumerian demon compared to Lilith, with roots to Ninus, Nineveh, and the number 9. Pen, to hold down or bind, as in pentagram. Quin, 5, or quintar, the state of Satan, the sea beast, Copernicus. Or Capricorn, however you want to say it. Ren, an Egyptian name for the spirit of the soul. Sin, S-I-N, well, need I say more? Tin, actually 10 or mega at the end, or planetary metal of Jupiter, Jove. Vin, wine, as in vino, another spirit. Are you starting to get to their vehicle identification number? Vin. Win actually refers to the wind or the air or spirits of the air, whom they claim they have won. And Zen, well, there you have it. Ignorance is bliss. Again, it's difficult to discuss such things, so most have chosen not to, and thus we have been running around calculating pi and looking for secret words as if we will find a solution amongst false data that belongs to the controllers. So this problem will need to be removed by you, as it is more deeper than a surgeon with the most precise tools can reach. I can, however, describe at least the layout to you. The fact is, when man loses his virginity, he suffers little, if any, physical pain. This is why we will talk about women first. However, the whole act of losing your innocence to something insignificant and temporary leaves a deep scar, seldom realized. But again, we will first talk about women. After sitting with some experts on homeopathy, I was enlightened once. More to the fact that every hole in the body leaks energy, if not properly sealed. However, scars leak an enormous amount of energy. Also keep in mind, most holes in the human body have some type of flap that covers them when they retract. My goal when talking about this, amongst many others, is to salve the deepest wounds with salve. Sap. So they may be healed, and one can build high energy once more to pierce the illusion and the sluggishness that accompanies an invasion. It came to my attention that these predators, whom many are calling gods now, knew that they could affect our species by tampering with our women first. This is due to the fact that all males here on this planet are still born of women, and should not forget that. So in short, we have no woman. We will definitely have no men. And judging on how they are making the women conform, what is being birthed from their wombs now can hardly be considered the same as the first noble ones that came forth. Instead of helping women, most men have joined in, just as businessmen care nothing for the environment, have joined in league with one another, erecting yet more structures of devastation. So in reference, I give respect and admiration to the female of our species, as she has suffered most, and it is all too often her cry, whether internal or external, that has not been heard, and most importantly, not been avenged. I personally believe I have discovered the meaning of menstruation and why this affects our women, especially now. Not so much women still living in tribal societies. They don't have that. Not like we do in the cities. Now, despite the fact that the pains can be reduced and sometimes eliminated with proper diet, that does nothing for the women who are still lost in a world that does not know of such things. In fact, it is the majority. So everyone should keep in mind, by listening to this, that I'm speaking about a majority and not the few who have discovered their own methods of release. It is no mystery to those who study esoteric knowledge the power of a virgin. They can give off an essence that can only be found in a virgin. It's why some kings of old used to sleep with virgins. And this was supposed to be, it was supposed to give you long life, strengthen you. They still try to do it now, but it becomes an act of rape. They take the virginity. This is why there's so many cross-dressing pedophiles out there. So who was the most virgin in our locale? I said this before, but the answer would be our Earth. So who is responsible for taking our Earth's virginity? Could it be a specific upshoot of a serpent race now colonizing the colon and worming itself into everything? In order not to regress, I will leave the ultimate answer to the question up to you. I don't want to check out, well, you may want to check out Hidden Message in the Blade Runner again, and I can talk to you about that again if you'd like. They don't even know they aren't really human. Remember that? Look at the state we are actually in. When a woman comes through the traumatizing experience of losing her virginity, it is generally under a few circumstances. She has found a suitor, and a suitor has been found for her, or she is forced into this. In the first case, if she has found a suitor, as relationships are very unstable these days, and also in the past, she generally suffers the heartbreak when the relationship is over, and the sullen feeling when something has been given that is not, well, that is special, but cannot be regained. Is this not the state of the planet? Has the planet not given something to the beings that are still hanging around her, but do not respect her? So I got to thinking really deep about this, and discovered one of the most vicious cycles that will surely lead to an ultimate extinction of the species, unless we learn how to communicate properly. In this tense, I don't mean verbally, but with our minds and our bodies and our souls. If we do not begin to respect once more those that have given something to us, and we can never repay this debt, we have failed to hear the cry of our internal universe. Now, things have not always been this way. It has been known in all of the most ancient cultures that if you had chosen a mate, then you chose him or her for life. To violate that structure meant that you were either put to death or forced to remain alone for the rest of your life. It's obvious to me that the ancients knew that beyond the bond with each other, we have nothing. And once one starts showing themselves unworthy of keeping a bond, they were useless to humanity and quickly became traitors, as they had not learned the lesson first extended to us by the universe. The universe gave us life. It owes us nothing more. And one should start to think about next time they are ready to complain. Fix what is going on. Talking about it is only a primary stage. Preliminary. The prelims. Ideas are just as ethereal as spirits. It is you that must make them happen. Breathe life into them. Make them real. Acting out every day like flesh. Man and woman are truly words made flesh. How much do the words that were spoken about you mean? Imagine how much more careful and meticulous people would be if they knew they had only one choice. They would not choose just for physical beauty, which everyone knows goes away. You would choose for other reasons, such as intellect, skill, ability, etc. This would cause many to work harder on themselves in order to attract a like being. So in short, people would work on a totally different structure. The whole reality of consumerism would fall apart immediately. Most of the Sumerian peoples were slaves from distant countries, so it made perfect sense to the oppressors to con the Sumerians. Come to tell you that many think this reality is based on making money and making people consumers. However, that is incorrect. That is just a byproduct of the unseen hand. It has ideas of extincting humanity. That will not happen because the truth will begin to flow through all people, all things, as people once again look to themselves and see the mess they are in. They will see that all have learned and gained still. All these things has very little use if we cannot get those in the reality with us, like family and friends. They must partake into it as well. What kind of people would we really be if somehow we got whisked off to some beautiful world with advanced beings, yet Mom didn't make it? Truly, do you think that would work for you? Of course not. It wouldn't. But now we all have had the idea, because they almost even got won by us, by the constant pressure which burst even the strongest pipes. Go fly away, little bird, to another place that will be welcomed. You will be loved. Forget about everyone. It's some of the problems I'm having with the cash stuff lately. Because I think, yeah, right. Let me know when you find this special magic place. The only home you have is this one. Or as the saying goes, we only get one earth. We better take care of her, because you are tethered to her. That's the silver cord, baby, just like in your mom. So I will go on further with this another time. I want to reveal to the masses, quickening like lightning striking the pineal gland. It's important to you, for you to meditate on the knowledge given, so you can regress yourself from this monstrous state. All this false knowledge of the world has produced. This is also why I didn't bother to have the pictures and medias in this one. Just my voice. I've gone through several stages of awakening, but this one is like no other. I can't be told to wait. Can't be pacified. I care nothing for just me feeling good, as it no longer works, no matter how many breaths I take. My dilemma is a great one. I can see. Either Earth emancipates, or I will suffer her fate with her, out of respect for the existence that she has given me, along with all the opportunities and the true knowledge of how to prevent such a waste of everything so beautiful and so precious. Welcome back, everyone. Yeah, I think there's a storm going on, so we've lost Revolution Radio, but back with us, and I lost my music for a while. Think I fixed that, and I guess you guys are hearing me, so let's continue. So you're witnessing one of the greatest secrets that has been hidden by the church, and it is known that the last rite of the Mistros is that the rite of Satan, which they discover, like Luke in Star Wars, Vader, Pater, or Satan is their father. The Dark Lord, the Jesuits said. Let's follow the Dark Father. And the saints are really all Saturns, Satans. When we look at the ecclesiastic history of Ireland, look at the names they use. They even have a Satan, a Saint Cronon, which is Cronus the Titan, a Saint Vulcan of the Cuthite mythology, Saint Kieran, C-I-R-N. Kieran is a satyr, again Cuthite mythology. They have a Saint Nessun, the centaur Cuthite mythology. Saint Daclin, god of generation, interesting name. Saint Endy, the one god, that's Irish, again. Saint Seno, again ancient god. Saint Luan, the moon, Irish. Could be Lucian, which is the wolf kings again, which would be Mars. But I'm going more Luna for that one. Saint Shannon, ancient Anna, mother of the gods, Irish, River Shannon. Saint Dima, a good god, Irish, good god. So all of their words taken from someone else. I've been wondering who's their daddy lately. Not the gods, but the Irish. So to keep this in proper scope, you realize that they are all now in groups joined. Other than that, you'll get lost in pantheism and that kind of stuff, and it will all blur together to a point where one just gives up attempting to unravel it. In this conflict, you have Jove versus his father Saturn, with a goddess running interference according to their agendas. You have goddesses such as Ma, Inanna, Lilith, Ki, who have children on both sides. Very clear indicated that they are in various groups. One of these names, the old serpent is Leviathan, the crooked serpent. The word Leviathan is probably Levitan. Levi is a band, Tan is a serpent, or a dragon. But the Levi tribe answers to the third month, and they make jeans. Blue jeans. Or, well, jeans. When we go to the story of the mother, we always have to look at the moon god, Sin. And what's happened wherein. And we have to go to again. At no time in history was the city of so important as the third dynasty. Sin, or Nanar, if you like, described as a young bull, a strong bull of heaven, perfect in every part, his beard of lapsi, or lazli. Again, it's crystals. It's our myth, which could also be it was a stone. Controversy continues over the status of royal tombs of Ur and things like that. But it's consistent with the prominence of the moon god and worshipped and departed ancestors. All the early archaeological remains of Ur indicate very prominent early flood. In the king list of kings that reigned before the flood for a millennium. The flood came. Afterwards, kingship was sent down from apparently on high, and then sent out through all the worlds, which could explain why the Irish people have so many saints and we're okay with accepting this. We always get duped. All of our people, the stories are a little bit the same, which I think means the stories a little bit were the same. Nannar was thought to have arisen from a god of a nomad. Most of the gods were thought to arisen from a god of the nomads. Sometimes, and most times, especially about Nannar, protector of cattle. So he's herd and the hunter. Related to a masculine cult, again, moon god. All of these things, it's the same stories repeated, changed a little bit to fit with myths that really worked with the people there. In early Babylon, the moon cult was a national religion. The name Chaldeans means moon worshippers. In the Bible, Ur is referred to as Ur of the Chaldees. Babylonian mythology, Sin, Shamash, and Ishtar formed a trinity of deities. First trinity of the gods were also absorbed into the lunar cycle, becoming the phases of the moon, thus giving the moon a supreme role as connecting between deities and mankind. The moon is during the period of his visibility. In the first 5 days, the god Anu. From the 6th to the 10th day, the god Ea. From the 11th to the 15th day, the god Enlil. After that, this trinity was adopted by the Assyrians, by the Hurrians, alongside their patron deities, and then passed on. And then Sin, Nannar, father of the sun, and Inanna, Ishtar, queen of heaven, central astral deity. These things, Sin and Ishtar, the rumblings of descent, again, it's talking about a breakup and the relationship between the moon god and his daughter Inanna. Sumerian, Ishtar, Babylon, Athrit, Canaan, Al-Uzu, Arabia, Hathor, Egypt, Hekt 8, Greece. It's complex, holds the key to gender difficulties, if nothing else, have accompanied the emergence of the monotheistic, the Yahweh, the downfall from Eden, ultimately the patriarchal tradition, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Inanna, or Ishtar, although she is the queen of heaven, arose out of the sea, as did Aphrodite, the Canaanite goddess, and Mary, Mari, goddess of the sea from Cyprus and Crete and Syria. Later, the Virgin Mary. Of course, father and daughter indicate that an evolution took place, which the daughter underwent a resurgence, just as El and Baal and Canaan. Same words. And still could be how they just change male to female, female to male, depending on when and where we are. Once a fertility goddess, becoming something a little else, something hated, perhaps. But sin, his supreme character, passed later times to his female counterpart, who finally replaced him. When the female aspect of the lunar deity came to displace the male, the wife of the moon god became identified with the moon itself, while the goddess Ishtar maintained associated with the planet Venus. This is symbolically represented as the lunar crescent, enclosing a star within its horns, which is the crest of Islam. This identification of Ishtar and the moon and the evening star just throws an interesting light on the origin of goddesses. It derives from a common idea that the morning and the evening star are the two wives of the moon. When the morning and the evening star came to be identified, they became Ishtar, her two complementary aspects, love in the evening, death in the morning. The relationship between male and female counterpart of the moon was variable, changeable, but we all had it. Ishtar is sometimes the daughter of the moon. Sometimes he is her son and a male. Tammuz is expressed as a moon god. Ishtar was horned and brought up out of the foam of the water goddess, like Aphrodite, thus explaining her connection with Mary, goddess of the sea, and how it was so easy to just say, well, it's kind of close to what we thought happened. Let's take their money. They come bearing gifts. All this diverging relationship between a moon god and a fertility goddess becomes pivotal in understanding the breakdown in relationships between Yahweh and Ishtar that I talked about before, the Queen of Heaven, when God had a wife. The fall from Eden is specifically associated with the sacrificial cycle of Inanna and Tammuz. Dumuzi, also said, becomes the dying Adam, doomed to mortality, original sin of Eve, which is funny. Sin with an S is sin with a C. It's talking about the moon. But they don't tell us that. She accepted the advice of a serpent, ate a fruit. This is all reformulated, a link between male death and sex. The original sin of Eve, human sacrifice, which reverberated in a vulnerable line of patriarchal inheritance. 3 days of a descent also represent 3 days between the old and the new moon. Sin, himself, also the green one, because he is Cain, and is threatened by 7 devils of the underworld while he's away. So, let's make his departure as terrible as possible. The moon, from its earliest foundations of all theological development, especially amongst the whole Semite race, even after the Semites were doing agriculture, moon worship, the religion of Adam, and the crescent is still the badge of Islam, the emblem of Israel. Once it was. Arab women even now insist that the moon is the parent of mankind. The cult of the god Sin is found in every land, even more than Saturn, maybe even before Saturn. That he was the god or the father of the great gods, the Lord of heaven, the sun god being, merely an attendant deity, not as important, and numerous ancient Arab inscriptions show that the moon deity was the most prominent in every cult everywhere. Even after the conquests of Alexander, Hurin, or Kirin, who was a moon, came to be a center of the intellectual, a religious activity. It continued again to the Christian era. The form of worship evolved, changed, transmuted, I guess, into the new one around Hermes, Trismegistus. Hermes, thrice great. That gives him his thrice great because of his 3 days of darkness, who represents past, future, present. The Hermetic view is one in which God receives both as an idea and an embodied world. He is the supra-individual source of a particular world experience or world configuration. The experience of the world, in this matter, is open to the possibility of a transcendent, a guide, who is able to provide impressions to consciousness that are palpable and manifest, in a way contradict the observations and conclusions of every natural science we've ever had, yet extends to the idea man stands in the world alone, endowed with consciousness that is exclusively restricted to the ability to receive scientifically evaluated sense impressions. The Hermetic aspect is thoroughly empirical and remains within the realm of natural experiences. The accidental falling into your lap. Basically, they are the world. They are the one world. The one Hermes opens up to us. Sin's power of illumination are revealed in his title, the lamp of heaven, the lamp of earth. Illumination is not the only physical light of the moon, of course, but also the revealing of the will of the gods, the enlightenment, especially through oracles. In an Assyrian prayer, in an ellipse, which we just had, Sin is beseeched to give oracle to the gods. As such, Sin becomes the Lord of knowledge, the tablet in which Nabu, that's where we get that from, the scribe of the gods, writes the divine decrees. because this is an overlap. Functions of given oracles. Nabu is associated with sin. His name appears to be an element in the names of most Babylonian kings, from Nebuchadnezzar to Nabonidus. It is Nabu as the scribe, who the Egyptian Thoth and the Persian Hagsak, as well as Apollo and Orpheus, later Morpheus. In the Hellenistic and Christian traditions, he is also Enoch or Idris, later under Islam. See, we take the same things, transmuted by whoever's coming and changing our shit, basically. All the people of this planet would have known that the moon was a big deal. Now I can go into names and stuff like that. It gets like boring. But even the Elohim of Abraham, in the time of Abraham, there reigned Sheba, the wife of Sin, a priestess of the mountain, which goes back to the green god, and that the guy who, was bringing in guys and they're smoking the shit out of stuff. But, they were in Afghanistan, so it's really weird that they use the same name for a queen, but in Afghanistan, could be the same woman, could be the same story. It's hard to figure out. They're telling us something, though. She founded sanctuaries called Haran, later became harem, totally lost its significance. But they all worshipped a gold idol called Sin, basically. And the definition of Abram, which in the earliest documents is a synonym for Ab-Sin. It's constant with ancestor worship associated with the moon god. Still worshipped in the Kaaba, although the people walking around it 7 times don't know what they're doing, don't know who they're praying to, as we've said before. So the pattern of 2 Venus wives of the moon pervades all the patriarchs, continues again. Canaan, Jewish. Abraham had 2 wives, Sarah and Hagar, who departed. Jacob also had Rachel and Leah. El courted 2 goddesses by the sea by roasting a bird for them, presumably Erthas and Anat. Similarly, Yahweh worshipped at Elephantine 2 wives, apparently the same 2 goddesses. Adam, husband, both Eve and Lilith. 2 particularly, challenging women, if you're keeping us in the garden or the island or the concentration camp. Moses, also known for 2 wives. Moses, 2 wives. Jesus is the Christ Messiah, noted of 2 Marys. Bethany, who anointed his feet to his delight, and the Magdala, who anointed his head to his doom. His crucifixion celebrated at a full moon. I don't know, guys. To me, they're trying to tell us something. All of these ceremonies that are talking about the same thing. A moon god, not even a solar god, but something completely different. Again. Of course, Genesis The reference says, the Elohim, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Common knowledge that the Elohim is plural, refers to a group of God under the sphere of the elves, later the elves, or the elf frequency, which is making us crazy right now. But the next reference, Tower of Babel. And they're actually making that Ark of Babel, because that's a good idea. Anyway, according to the skirmish between Yahweh and Jupiter and the sons of Saturn, Saturn, born to a woman, mainly Cain, who at a point became a king and a Khan over the land, not the air though. When the body of one of the great Khans is carried to the mountain, 10,000 people were slain by soldiers on the occasion to furbish the king of an army in the other world. And these beings want sacrifice. They want our bodies. They want our blood. So it's also known by the adepts that the tower was being constructed in an attempt to take war to the plane of Jupiter, who is Baal, or who is ready, willing, and able, who is the one. He is Neo. Cain is the other guy. Cain was always the anointed one. But Baal, or Abel, the first to enter heaven, by building an external Merkabah, a boat or an ark of the Mer, or air, space, the Ka, spiritual coat, Ab, an abode, or bait, the rainbow bridge. The sons of men, to make a name for themselves, as they had been obliterated in the flood, and barely regrouped, but still spoke the same language, showing they were of one stock, one people, and it appears they are still in possession of some of the secret language, the knowledge passed to them by the Son of God, the Nephilim, written in a light language. This is where the agenda immediately now to confuse man's tongues. What the heck are these two things going to do? Are we not confused enough? It's apparent one of the major infractions that Sat, Enki, Cain commits is the abomination of mixing genetics, not just with the daughters of men, but with mammals, aquatic animals. These beings, when in physical form, were exterminated over time through hunts conducted by warrior bands seeking to slay monsters, climate change, and the 11 Holocaust, or the Alvin Holocaust. But their spirits remained, as they had also been blended with the light. Which sounds awesome. But this external rainbow bridge was constructed similar to frequency rooms in the Great Pyramid now. There are 7 steps according to the 7 colors of the rainbow. But that omits the other 2, the black and the white. But still talks about the 7 major chakras. Each step in the ziggurat was constructed to allow a priest, ascending or descending, to perceive and traverse the wheels, the chakras, the eyes, being immersed in the field. Know this. You have the equipment installed in you. It may sound a little over mystical, but hey, I didn't install the friggin' equipment. I'm just showing you it's already here. The equipment seems to give you the ability to jump through segments of time that have already lived through in order to escape endings. So now we must take a break from this to discuss the concept of the end. The word end is den. You'll find this in the etymology of the word den. Originally comes from Dan, Denmark or Danmark, the mark of Dan. It's the original Gothland or Godland. This is what I was warning people about, using the term God as a generalized term. In fact, given their energy to end once more, Goth, Gad, Goat, and God all have the same origin. Check the charts. I have shown that civilized ancient Britons, Anglo-Saxons, Normans, Scandinavians were Goths, and that English language is directly derived from Gothic. Ancient Swedish language still remains the title of Seogothic. Old name for Denmark is Gotland or Jutland. We're so blurred together. If we weren't Timid's monsters, we certainly are now, and we're speaking the one language again. We are doing the sign. We are. Most people now that have been dragged from the forest are speaking this, the one language. So they're going to construct a Tower of Babel here on this continent and Britain for the same reason they did it last time. Tear it down so we'll forget. Like it or not, we're speaking one language, and here we are. So I've gone over time, guys, and I hope I haven't bored you to death. I know it gets a little thick and weirdo, the stories. Would you like me to continue, or are you poking your eyes out from boredom? Let me play some music, and so let's continue, since I have you all here and I'm not boring you to tears yet. We're looking at the path of languages and words and spells, and the S word, sword, which used to be a healing word but became a word of death. So, Denmark, M, labia, or labio-nasal sign, occurs in Egypt in its earlier forms from pre-dynastic periods onwards, and on through Semite, Phoenician, Greek. Our language is Phoenician, basically. I can go into that. Sumerian, its parent, though, is now clearly disclosed in the symbolic M, or mad, or mat, a mountain between two hills. This is why there's two wives. It is the same story, in which a final consonant has been dropped out. Like I said, under K, which was Ka, or Kai, or Kaba, leaving its alphabetic values as Ma, or M, which one is usually the first thing we can say. It's a letter sign. It seemed to preserve, or at least preserve, the features of its original pictograph of two hills representing, well, it's still represented today, and it's noteworthy that it's a common runic form. It's practically identical to the earliest forms that we see anywhere in Sumeria and Akkadia and other Aryan languages. M interchanges with W, the sign for which is somewhat similar, inverted, derived from a different parent perhaps. N, a nasal sound found first in Egypt around 12th dynasty onwards, modern form as well, reversed, unreversed in Cadmean, and reversed in Semitic Phoenician. Its Sumerian parent is a sign of Nu. It looks like a V with a line or an X. It means no or not. Picturing, as they interpret, a line cancelled, crossed out. A primitive Sumerian form of a crossed line retaining in the runes still today. Now, it may take a while to pour all over this kind of stuff. You will not be the first, and once you discover the complete meaning of this language, I'm sure you won't be the last. But I've seen glimpses of this cable, this cabal, connected. Learn from this. The words we speak are making our world at this moment. Our word contains an L. That's why it's word. And that's the old God. So, how one has been trapped is through the language, which is why they're resurrecting Babel. One does not know the meaning of what they are creating, thus they live in a confused world that they are creating, or they have created. Scale of the wheel completely release the links in the chain. You will know you've done this when every word starts making sense. It appears that man, which is just MN, is saying, amongst other things, those who know about and those and are not from the mountain. I also assume this is why it is referred to as a reference to a real man. Why we keep hearing about real men and mankind, which is kin, which is the raped men, or the men from the raped people, or those who do not know about the holy mountain, which refers to the Ark of Noah. Mountains, arks, Achilles, they're the same thing. Like McDonald's, the golden arches. So now I will reveal what is the ark, the chest, or the crest. When the gods ceased to reign in their proper persons upon earth, they were succeeded by a series of demigods, who were in turn succeeded by the mans, and were duly followed by kings, in whom were enshrined in divine nature with characteristic attributes. When the physical or natural body of a king died, the divine portion of his being, the spiritual body, returned to its original abode with the gods. It was duly worshipped by men upon earth as a god and with the gods. So the stone and the bone connection. There's always been a capstone on any period or pyramid, as the capstone contained the original crystal of essence corresponding to the dimension that it was interacting with. You actually have mystical stones everywhere you look. You have the stone inside the Kaaba, the stone inside the coronation chair, the missing pyramid capstone, the crystal skulls, the crown jewels, the breastplate of Aaron. The question becomes, what were the children of men? In this case, Cain and his descendants attempting to commune with, and or aeon, Irish, meant one. This again, Neo. Anna, Irish, the mother of Tuatha De Danann, gods. Ark and Arg, Irish, a large chest in the form of a ship. Argo, Cuthite, the ship of Argo, the ark. Ashtar, Hebrew, to store. Ashtar, Irish, pronounced Ashthori. An exclamation of endearment, common use amongst the Irish still. Ashtaroth, city of Og, king of Bashan. Ashtoreth, Venus, goddess of Sion, later became Zion. Ashtoreth, Cuthite, Phoenician Astarte, Venus. Ashtoreth, Irish, also pronounced Ashthorek, still a common use amongst the Irish, saying, my love, my treasure. Or Ashtaroth, Hebrew, riches, treasures. Noah and the ark are much deeper metaphors for all things that need to be preserved from the precious cycles to the next. So certain knowledge was not lost. Written part of this knowledge, which was basically the language itself, was written on 2 tablets, the 2 wives. One tablet was imperishable by fire, the other imperishable by water. So it was sure to make the next cycle, at least one of them. These stones, containing inscriptions of the light language, became known as the Emerald Tablets, contained power because they contained the original language. It was that simple. In addition, it is known that in the time of the Adamu, there were several oaths, pacts, agreements made with the gods, especially Abraham and Moses. These oaths are the greatest possessions of the gods, as they are like credit. Generally, these arks always contain a stone infused with the essence of a deity, and the deity was known to live and rule from the stone, from the crystal. So these crystals, like the meteors, became the standard way of communicating with the deity. There are also common habit of keeping the skulls of the elder, the Adler, kings or giants, to communicate with, as the center of a skull contains a crystal. Your skull does. These are the real crystal skulls. This is also the purpose of the catacombs. Generally, all the skulls from the same family line. Priests frequent these places to communicate with the dead, the dreaming, the ancestors. In many cases, this state has come upon them, and the state has come upon them because they followed a path of the den, which is where one sleeps and is not awake. They have become dense. They have become stone. In case of any visitor to the planet, it is said when leaving the earth, they always leave behind a stone, the essence of themselves, or DNA, or Dan, the last state you were in before you left. If one happens to have the stone of the last ruler, he becomes a ruler also. Thus, the quest and the quarrel over the stone that fell from Satan's crown changed the whole world, because those from the land of Canaan already knew their father was Satan, and his stone became the grail that all of their ilk sought after, became Lord of the earth. Cain, Canaan, CNN, Canon, Conan, Chain, Khan, Ankh, King, Cohen, Enoch, priest. The priest kings and their kin, basically. This is why in the priory there is great talk of this stone, because these stones carry the energy of a deity. And in this case the deity was Satan, and the stone was a cube. On this stone the language of light was engraved, as is known in many pyramids that were covered in glyphs that would light up at certain times, showing the communication from the deity, like the one in George Bush's hand when he was in bed. I showed you that picture, right? I'll show you. When building a massive temple for time, dimension travel and transfer, I believe the construction had to consist of precise locations, precise measurements, precise geometric building due to harmonics, corresponding crystals to create such an external arc. I've also watched those in power of this world scrabble to attempt to secure all of these items to gain control. Total control, once more. This is what leads to the ball of power, the cycle, the soccer ball, or more properly, the sorcerer's Baal. Are you in the know? The ball consists of pentagrams and hexagrams. For many men, this is a big waste of time on all levels. So I'd advise you not to spend every moment you can, figuring out how to implode yourself into another cycle in the universal cosmic clock. Not all cycles, worlds are the same. They have primary numbers that give worlds their shapes of creation. These patterns and designs would be strange to us at first. Looking at a different language, this world, Earth, third planet, congruent with 3s and 6s because of its systems of times that are hardwired into planets' internal time, thus the 36.0 degrees. Now I have friends who have ventured beyond the construct, witnessed a fabric, a net laying, I guess, over this organic life, this plant net. It appears as the flower of life. I will not go into the flower of life since I've done it, but it's still being a construct of 3D cubes, which adds more credit to those who are manipulating things. It just shows how they're doing it. Now we enter the realm of the Time Lords. Before we begin, I ask everyone to consider this. Since we are on a dimension with magicians, high lamas, sorcerers, ascended masters, luminous, enlightened ones, and one may have barely obtained the status of neophyte, who do you imagine is actually in control? The ancient ones, for their part, seem to be associated with the abyss, the underground sea, the first earth, and with the constellations as well. It's not contradiction if one takes into account the fact that ancient man considered the sky itself to be an ocean, a cosmic ocean, and it was often called the abyss as well. There seems to be 3 star systems in particular that the ancient ones were associated with, which have given birth to what the Abdul Abharis describes as the cult of the dog, cult of the dragon, the cult of the goat, corresponding to the stars Draconis, the dragon, Sirius, the dog star, and Capricorn, the goat, which oddly based on the Yankee, the prototype of Satan, who Abdul is calling the elder god. Many beings are here to teach important lessons. It's already happened. Not all of their lessons were kind. So, that's it for today. Thanks for hanging with me, guys. And I'll talk to you very soon.